Trespassing in a Childhood Unwillingly by Kitty Cat on AO3, Chapter 29. Rescue? Izuku didn't move when he felt the world change, his eyes shut firmly. He could feel the soft plush of his carpet and could sense the stares of the others, but he didn't make any mention of it. He'd gone over and over what he knew they would say since he crawled into bed. He could still hear Auntie's cries as he had fallen asleep. En kicked him and he curled up tighter, refusing to move. "Get the fuck up, kid. We need to have a talk," he stated, kicking Izuku again. When Izuku didn't move, En grabbed the back of his shirt and pulled him to his feet. Izuku squeaked in protest, but his feet dangled over the floor helplessly. "Drop him," Nana said, flicking En on the forehead. He did, and Izuku plopped right back onto the floor and buried his face in his knees. "Either we have this conversation with you present, or we don't," Kudo said from the table. "Now, we'd like to have you here so we can treat you like the adult you think you are. But if you won't cooperate, we won't fight you. Keep acting like a child." Izuku glared up at him just in time to see Dai flip Kudo off. "Give the kid a break. His friend is currently with them." There was venom in his voice as he spoke, and Izuku could feel the cold air drop over the room. Nana glanced down at him, now the only one still standing as En went back to the table. "Izuku, we do need to talk," she said softly, holding a hand out to him. He regarded it for a second before taking it with a huff. "You won't change my mind," he promised, letting her pull him to his feet. She hummed but didn't say anything, leaving him at his chair before she returned to hers. He glanced over at the one beside him, his father's glowing form. It never got better to see, but Yoichi was adamant that they couldn't switch seats. He had scolded Izuku the few times he had tried to secretly make changes around the table. He tucked his legs up onto the chair, leaning forward onto the table. "I'm doing it. The heroes might try to save him, but it's not going to work. Kachan isn't that lucky. He took a deep breath, trying to just think on the facts. "He has high property damage when he fights. Endeavor's even worse. It's a high-profile case. They're going to be there, and I can't let them hurt Kachan. Not if I can help. If I can just get in, you're not changing my mind," he finally decided on, crossing his arms over his chest. Yoichi said nothing, raising an eyebrow at Izuku. He did his best to match the expression, but Yoichi always had a way of just looking slightly off. "We're not going to stop you," he finally said, his words echoing through the plane. Izuku scoffed. "Listen, I don't need—" He stopped, processing what Yoichi said. "Huh?" "We talked about it, and had a vote. It was unanimous," Yoichi explained. Izuku glanced across the table, and most of the Vestiges gave him a small smile back. Kudo and En didn't. "We have all raised you since you were young, Nine, and although this was not our choice, I think it was for the best. We know that you would do it, with or without our help, so we want to offer you our help." Kudo huffed. "I'm not an idiot. You'd be dead the second one of those villains spotted you without us. It doesn't mean we think it's a good idea," he clarified. Bruce smacked him on the hand, and Kudo glared back at him. "I have to admit, I was hesitant to help as well," Bruce confessed, "but I also understand that I would have done the same thing. I have done something similar, but if we are helping you, there are certain rules we have to follow." "Like what?" Izuku asked hesitantly. He had to admit, it would be easier with their help, especially Nana's. She knew how the heroes operated the most. He would have to get through them to find Kachan. Yoichi took back the conversation. "You keep yourself open to us. We won't speak to you or step out how Bruce did that one time. It takes its toll on all of us. But if the situation gets dire, you need to be willing to switch out with one of us. Fully." Izuku bit his lip. "But won't that just make it worse?" he asked with a small shrug. "To switch out, I'd lose control of my body, and we haven't been able to switch out that fast. I'd have to be able to find a safe spot to rest." Which brought up so many more questions about what he actually had waiting for him, what the worst thing to happen would be. He had seen Eraserhead's scars on his elbow in passing. That would be the worst case. Dai tapped his fingers on the table before he leaned back in his chair. "You need to put your safety above everything else you will encounter. That includes Katsuki." Izuku went to protest, but Nana shook her head. "Don't, Izu. I know you don't want to think like that, but 5 is right. We are already in uncharted territory in multiple ways. You shouldn't be able to talk to us, shouldn't be able to switch out who's in charge, and there shouldn't be 2 holders of One for All alive this long. Izuku bit his lip, glancing away from her. He didn't want to argue with any of them, much less Nana. If that's true, he whispered, before he paused to think about the rest. Well, then why do you let me do this all? Because you're an idiot, En said, and Nana flicked him. He glared at her, sighing. Because we all had to make a decision like this. For some of us it worked. He frowned, leaning back in his chair, and others it didn't. But you would do it without us if you could. The most we can do is make sure it works. The future of this quirk remains the highest priority, though. No matter what, Hikage said for the first time, there are still things we need to do. The room dropped into silence as Izuku looked at them all. He could almost feel the unsaid message that passed between them, but he didn't know what it was. What other secrets had they kept from him? Your last rule, Yoichi cleared his throat. You don't go in alone. Izuku shifted anxiously on his feet, his eyes pinned to the wall of the hospital. The nurse had let him in without questioning who he was. She had noticed his UA pin on his bag, but had rushed away before he could speak to her. Not that he needed to. All he had to do was step inside the room. Then proceed to ask heroes in training to risk everything just to save Kachan. He groaned, turning on his heel to walk away from the door. It was a stupid plan in the first place. None of them would risk that, and even worse, they might turn him in. Then Kachan would be left all alone with the League of Villains. He could do it himself, he just needed to. He paused, remembering Yoichi's promise. That if he broke any of the rules they had given him, then they wouldn't help him. He couldn't do it without their help. Their quirks? He bit his lip, whining, before he turned back around and strode to the door. He grabbed the handle and threw it open, wincing when it hit the wall loudly. Every face in the room turned to stare at him, eyes wide. Kirishima grabbed something off of Todoroki's bed, shoving it under his blankets as the rest of them adjusted to block his sight. Hi, Momo stuttered out, leaning on the bed. Izuku blinked before he looked around the room. Where are the... I thought there would be more of you, he admitted, rubbing his neck. I didn't mean to... A flash of paper caught his eye from under Todoroki's sheet, a picture of Kachan plastered on the front. Todoroki kicked his leg up, the blanket settling over the paper before Izuku could read it. Can we help you? Kirishima asked sheepishly, tipping his head. Actually, he bit his lip, shutting the door with his foot. I know this is a big ask, especially since you don't really know me. I mean, it's always a different one, and Todoroki coughed a bit, and Izuku jumped. I'm going to save Kachan, he blurted out as he clenched his fists at his side. I thought we were doing that, Todoroki said, before Kirishima smacked his leg and he pulled it away. The paper floated off the bed, and Yaoyorozu struggled to grab it before Izuku caught it. It was a map, with a building highlighted in green beside Kachan's glued-on picture. You know where he is, Izuku whispered, and Yaoyorozu groaned. We might as well tell him. What's the harm it could do? Kirishima said, his voice a pinched whisper. Yaoyorozu's hand waved in defeat, collapsing back into the now empty space on Todoroki's hospital cot. How did you figure this out? Kirishima hesitated before motioning to Yaoyorozu. Because it's wrong, Izuku finished, holding the hand paper back to Kirishima. Yaoyorozu's head popped back up, her eyes narrowing. Izuku shuffled between feet, fighting the urge to leave again. Sorry. I put a tracker on one of those things they had there. You weren't there. How do you know? Izuku bit his lip, pulling out his phone. It was open to his Find My Kid app. Kachan's location pinging from the other side of the city from where Yaoyorozu had marked. He has a tracker built into his shoe. In the sole, we both do. It also has an emergency ping, but he hasn't activated it yet. Kirishima took his phone, squinting at the damaged screen. Huh, it does say he's somewhere else. He tossed the phone back to Todoroki, who caught it before he placed it by his side. Can I, Izuku tried to say before Yaoyorozu cut him off. We can't take you with us, she said softly, her fingers curling in the paper she had gotten back. We shouldn't even be going, but you aren't in the hero course. You aren't trained like us, and you won't be able to help fight at all. Izuku bit his lip, frowning. I can still fight. I've been training, and I'm going to have to agree, Mito, Kirishima said sheepishly, rubbing his neck. I mean, even with training, you still don't have a quirk, or any actual experience. His voice dropped into a whisper as he glanced away from Izuku. Okay, well, we'll need to figure out where this is, Yaoyorozu said, sitting up. She pulled out her own phone and tucked her legs onto the bed. I can get the Google map of this, but we also need to make sure we stay out of the way of the heroes. Kirishima, can you... Costumes, Kirishima said with a nod. Yeah, I got those. It's just going to be us three, so... Izuku looked between them and the door as he bit his cheek. He knew Kirishima the best out of them, and even for him it was a friend through a friend. He should have expected that they wouldn't trust him with this. He was quirkless as far as they knew. Even with his quirk status being changed in the incident, it was still an unknown to everyone else. Something touched his shoulder and he jumped, backing away slightly. Todoroki held his phone out to him and he sighed, taking it. Thanks, Todoroki, he said gratefully. How are you feeling? Todoroki shrugged. I'm fine. I get worse in training. He glanced over to the other two before he looked back at Izuku. You should come. You did help us find him, and Bakugou trusts you more than any of us. Kirishima stopped talking, moving over to join them. Todoroki, it just won't work, he tried to explain. He can calm Bakugou down. He is able to handle a few punches, Todoroki said with a shrug. Kirishima frowned before walking back to Yaoyorozu. His voice dipped low enough that Izuku couldn't hear well, Yaoyorozu leaning closer. Thanks for standing up for me, Izuku bit his lip, shaking his head. Why do you want to help him? You could get in a lot of trouble with your dad. He seems like a bit of a loudmouth. Todoroki scoffed and crossed his arms over his chest. Everything I do, it makes him upset. That's my goal. He looked over at Izuku, his face serious. I need to know the truth. Is Bakugou All Might's secret love child? Izuku paused before he shook his head. No, he's not. I promise. Todoroki hummed. You paused. That means he is. Yaoyorozu, he is coming with us. Katsuki ground his teeth, the constant prattling driving him insane. Shut your fucking mouth, he finally yelled, lunging towards the blonde girl who would just not shut up. She paused, turning from where she was laying on the couch, in the lap of some weirdo with a mask. No, she said, before she flipped back around, laying her head back over the edge of her arm. Anyways, so what can I do? I mean, she's super, super cute, but she's a hero in training, and she would never like me if I came onto her. Why couldn't we have grabbed her instead of this one? Katsuki clicked his tongue, flexing and unflexing his hands. The rope didn't loosen, but he'd be out soon enough. These idiots couldn't hold him. Hey, could you introduce me to her? She asked, appearing beside him with a wide grin. He spit on her cheek, and she scoffed, wiping it off. You sure I can't stab him? He looks so much prettier with blood. He glared at the knife that tipped near his eyes. No, the crusty one said, his leg bouncing incessantly in the air. He has information I want. The burnt one stood up from where he leaned himself against the wall, just staring at Katsuki. He didn't say anything as he walked behind Katsuki, and he heard the clinking of glass bottles. I say we leave him to rot, he finally spoke, his voice a gross whisper. Katsuki ignored them, squeezing his fist shut. The ropes loosened slightly, and he grinned before the blonde pounced in front of him again. Just one cut, she whispered, holding the knife up to him. He touched his cheek against the knife, and she frowned, pulling it away. He wiggled one wrist out before something grabbed it. I'd appreciate you sitting still, the mistman's voice said as the ropes retied on Katsuki's wrists. He tried to rip them free, but they were tighter and blocked his range of motion. He should fry the bastards, a single blast to the face, but there were too many to take out before they could react. He just had to sit still. Izuku knew where he was. He didn't need to activate the emergency beacon yet. Izuku would find him. Take him off, the dusty one said. Katsuki paused, trying to crane his neck to see what he was talking about, but the ropes kept him firmly in place in the chair. Are we sure that's wise? The masked one asked from the couch, messing with a marble in between his fingers. The burnt one scoffed. I ain't doing it. I have enough fucking burns on me. Katsuki could hear more liquid pour into a glass, filling it to the top. Katsuki jumped when someone touched his wrist before the ropes fell away. He groaned, rubbing the red marks now on his wrists as he turned to glare at the men. Fuck you do that for? I'll toast all your asses. He flexed his fingers, trying to get the feeling back in them. Good luck with that, the lizard-looking one snorted. Katsuki glared at him, and he raised his hands, turning back to the stupid fucking video conference, where the bastards who had let him be grabbed were promising his safe return. It was all a load of bull. There was a moment before the glass slammed onto the table. "Oh, look, the fucking Pomeranian is docile," the burnt one said, raising the glass back to him. Katsuki flipped him off. "No, I just know that burning your asses does nothing. I'm going to get out of here sooner or later, and I promise I won't be joining you." He matched the dusty one's gaze, clearly the one in charge here, even if he looked disgusting with those musty hands all over his face and body. "I believe you," he finally said, shrugging, "but I don't like that." "Teacher?" he asked, tipping his head. Katsuki flinched when the TV that was on the wall seemed to shake, static filling the room. "You have such a deep mind," a deep voice boomed in the room. "Tell me, boy, is your predecessor on his way?" Katsuki snarled, his hands popping. Before he could speak, another unknown voice came through the room. "Anybody order pizza?" it asked, knocking on the door. All eyes turned to the door, and the static cut out. Someone asked, before the wall blew open. Katsuki ducked, blocking his face, as Rebel came flying at him. All Might stood at the door, a grin across his stupid fucking face. Katsuki growled and went to say something before he felt a coldness run down his spine. All Might said, his face dropping as the cold grew stronger. Katsuki turned and raised his hand, blasting away the mist person before they took him. Someone tackled him from the side before the darkness and cold covered him again. He fought to get his hands up again before they covered his mouth tightly. "Kachan," Izuku said, and he immediately stopped struggling. Izuku grunted, holding him down with one arm. "I don't know where we are. The blast must have messed up his portals," he rambled before Katsuki pinched his hand. He went to sit up, but Izuku held him down. "No, there's something out there. Trust me." Before Katsuki could think up an argument, a blast of air ricocheted over their heads, sending dust flying through the air. "Hold your breath," Izuku whispered, before the dust seemed to grow thicker, obscuring his vision. Izuku helped him up and dragged him over to a building's wall where he was finally able to see his friend. His hair was matted badly under a black wig, makeup smeared down his face. "Izuku," he said, cupping his friend's face in his hands. Izuku winced, his eyes looking around wildly before they settled on him. "How the fuck are you glowing?" he asked, a little louder than he meant. Izuku glanced away before he grabbed Katsuki's wrist and dragged him back. A silver blur passed by his face, a knife embedding itself in the wall. "We need to go. They're waiting," he whispered frantically. His eyes grew brighter before he crouched lower to the floor. "I'm going to try something," he said. "I don't think this is the time." Katsuki was cut off as a black static rope wrapped around his waist. "The fuck?" Izuku grinned, the glow getting slightly brighter before the world passed by them quickly. They couldn't have gone more than 20 feet before Izuku stumbled and Katsuki had to tumble out onto the rocky road. "Izu, Kachan," Katsuki asked, wiping off his pants to look back at Izuku. He was face first in the dirt, the glow gone from his body. "Izuku," Katsuki repeated, grabbing his shoulders. He slumped forward and Katsuki cursed, finally able to look around. It was a mess. They were on the edge of it, but dust still covered the area as he tried to breathe in with little luck. All Might was exchanging blows with someone, a bright flurry of light his only indicator. "Izuku," Katsuki repeated, shaking his friend. He went to throw him over his shoulder when Izuku finally shifted, pulling him up. "Fuck you," Katsuki yelled, punching his shoulder. "You don't get to act like the hero and then pass the fuck out." He went to punch his shoulder again, but he stopped him. "It's not Izuku. It's one. Let's go. I know the back ways." The bitch grabbed his hand as if he couldn't walk, keeping him low to the floor as they moved. He did seem to know where they were going despite the rubble, so Katsuki didn't fight it. One was pretty smart for a dead guy. Finally, the dust settled and Katsuki caught sight of shitty hair and the two others standing anxiously at the end. "The fuck?" he asked before one shushed him. There was a sharp whistle before one bit his lip, blood dripping as he continued forward. He gripped his head with his other hand, his footsteps becoming unsteady as they got closer and closer to the end. "Fuck this," Katsuki yelled, before he grabbed his friend and hauled his ass down the rest of the way. Both of one's hands went up to his head as he pressed his eyes shut in concentration. He mumbled something that Katsuki couldn't make out through all the noise. He was 2 steps away from the rest of them before one went limp, a small word leaving his mouth. "Brother." Okay, that's probably going to be it for this recording. I just did 27, 28, and 29, all in one session, and I technically need to go because I have someone waiting for me, but, let's see. I'm not on the right chapter. Hold on. I accidentally went forward a chapter. Okay, yeah, they didn't want to, the Vestiges, like, they would decide to help out because they all knew Izuku and they all know how stubborn the boy is. And despite their warnings, he would have went without them, so, you know, it's better for them to help. Oh, him using their quirks. Okay, so you saw it a little bit with, the smoke from, oh my gosh, which one is the smoke? Hold on, I got it. The smoke is N, right? Because Dai, okay, and then Dai has the whips, so he used both of those, and then he used, danger sense as well. So that's 3 that he used in quick succession, so it only makes sense that he would just pass out, because that's a lot on his body when he doesn't use them in that quick a succession. And then one switching out at the end there, how do I explain it? He knows the way, but he doesn't quite know the way. What he knows is he can kind of feel his brother's signature, because his brother's the one who gave him part of the quirk, so he can kind of feel where his brother is and move away from that, which was kind of what that was. I don't know if there's anything else in here. That very end part will come into play in the next chapter, which I have not gotten to yet. The next one, it says in my description, it says we'll get more Shigaraki and Izuku All Might Hate Club in the next one. This is when I decided like 35 chapters was a pretty good one. Anyway, I think that's it for this one, and I will see you in the next one, titled More Secrets and More Talks. Yep.